Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwanted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. My name is Emma Vigeland in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Robert Pape on why the Capitol rioters are different from other extremists. Meanwhile, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announces she will create an independent 9/11-style commission to investigate the insurrection attempt after former President Trump was acquitted in the Senate. But Republicans are already feeling the political ramifications of the insurrection and subsequent impeachment from their own party. Republican Senators Richard Burr and Bill Cassidy were censured by their state parties for their vote to convict, and other Republicans who voted yes may face the same fate. This comes as Democrats are defending their decision not to call witnesses in order to wrap up President Trump's inevitable acquittal, after Trump's attorneys jumped at the opportunity to ostensibly call hundreds of witnesses. Public opinion appears to be on the Democrat side, however, as ABC News Ipsos found in a poll, nearly 60% believe Trump should have been convicted. Meanwhile, Joe Biden looks to put impeachment in the rearview mirror as he begins a road tour this week, working to excite the public about his stimulus package that includes $1,400 checks, hopefully. As word gets to inflation and deficit-obsessed economists like Larry Summers, you don't have the influence you used to, thankfully. Deadly winter storms throughout the South and Midwest leave millions without power, including 4.2 million people in Texas, as record-low extreme temperatures freeze the state's electrical grid. Scientists have linked the severity and frequency of winter weather storms like this to a heating Arctic. Here in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo faces growing calls to resign after evidence mounts that his administration deliberately undercounted nursing home deaths due to coronavirus by nearly half. He addressed a mistake in the press conference, but did not apologize, maybe in his next book, but I doubt it. Biden and Democrats plan to unveil their immigration bill next week, which will grant a path to citizenship for 11 million people, although with a filibuster in place, chances of passage are up in the air. Meanwhile, the Lincoln Project, which hoped to be able to influence Joe Biden as president, faces accusations of shady finances and sexual harassment. Shocker. In Myanmar, the military continues its brutal crackdown of anti-coup protests and protesters as authorities cut internet access throughout the country. And lastly, Israel reportedly blocks a shipment of thousands of doses of COVID vaccine to Gaza meant for healthcare workers. Gaza has yet to receive any vaccine despite being occupied by Israel and being home to around 2 million people. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, everybody. I am not Sam. I am in for Sam this week. Very excited to be hosting the Majority Report solo, although we will get a bunch of fun guests in this week, and we have Matt Leck on the other end, who's being a super producer helping me out. So apologies in advance if there are any technical difficulties. I'm still learning this on the fly. But,
Yeah, no, great job, Emma. I just want to point out, apparently there's a Zoom thing where we sound a little bit pitched down. So just imagine yourself a little bit huskier today, and you'll get what the audience is feeling. I think it should maybe work itself out. I'm not sure. Zoom is weird, folks, but other than that, Emma, great job on the first rolling of your own intro, which is difficult to do and calibrate. But
so wait, I sounded deep voiced. Is that
we both sound a little bit deep voiced? I think on YouTube at least. So, but Yeah, so I guess people are just going to have to enjoy that. but people thought it was because we were doing this, like I was playing a pre-tape too slowly, but this is actually live. This is actually happening now, and just somehow our voices are a little bit slowed. So, anyways.
Well, hopefully, podcast version, you won't be hearing this, but we have a lot of news to get to, obviously. Specifically, Matt, Ted Cruz, he's been standing by Donald Trump this whole time over this whole impeachment thing, even though Donald Trump called his wife ugly. Donald Trump insinuated that his father assassinated JFK. There were a lot of things that Ted Cruz stood up or had to put up with when it came to Donald Trump.
Was his dad in New Orleans? And why wouldn't the CIA at least have talked to him after being an exile from Cuba? That's the questions I want to know.
Just asking questions. But it looks like Ted Cruz may have grown a spine. I didn't check the date on this clip, but it seems like Ted Cruz has figured out Donald Trump may not be the best guy.
Donald seems to think he's Michael Corleone, that if any voter, if any delegate doesn't support Donald Trump, then he's just going to bully him and threaten him. I don't know if the next thing we're going to see is voters or delegates waking up with horses' heads in their bed. But that doesn't belong in the electoral process, and I think Donald needs to renounce this incitement of violence. He needs to stop asking his supporters at rally to punch protesters in the face, and he needs to fire the people responsible. He needs to denounce Manafort and Roger Stone and his campaign team that is encouraging violence, and he needs to stop doing it himself. When Donald Trump himself stands up and says, if I'm not the nominee, there will be rioting in the streets. Well, you know what? Saul Alinsky was laughing in his grave watching Donald Trump incite violence that has no business in our democracy.
Oh, wait, nominee. That was from 2016. But back then, Ted Cruz was quite interested in admonishing Donald Trump for inciting violence. Not so much these days. He works in lockstep with Donald Trump. He votes with him in lockstep. Here we have a tweet from Garrett Huckey. Senator Ted Cruz told me that as intense as yesterday's video presentation of the attack was, managers haven't proven incitement by Trump. Incitement has a high legal bar to clear, particularly pertaining to political speech, which has the most First Amendment protection. But Cruz was very willing to more loosely use that definition when he was trying to score political points on Donald Trump during the primary. Once Trump won the primary and Cruz had to realize, I can't pretend to be this faux populist, this guy who actually just says what Republican voters want, he's going to be the one that wins the primary. That kind of had to settle in for him, and then he's been a good little soldier ever since.
Yeah, when he was talking to Dana Loesch, she was talking to her not in his capacity as a constitutional scholar, but in her capacity as a dingbat. So I think that's where the discrepancy comes from.
A complete panderer. But yeah, I mean, Trumpism is not going to leave the Republican Party anytime soon. There was a poll that came out in Politico Morning Consult that shows that a 2024 primary poll showing that Donald Trump has a 53% approval in who they'd vote for in the primary, with Mike Pence at 12%, Don Jr. at 6%, and then Nikki Haley at 6%. Ted Cruz all the way down there at 4%. So that's the top overmajority of nominees who are from Trump world. 53% for Donald Trump himself. Trump has a majority as the Republican nominee in 2024. Mike Pence, 12%, who's Trump adjacent, and of course Donald Trump Jr., who's mini Trump. So this is not going away anytime soon. And I want to reiterate that because Republicans are trying to purge him from the party in a way that doesn't piss off their voters, but that is going to be impossible. Let's turn to this Bill Cassidy clip, because Bill Cassidy is trying to frame himself as a reasonable Republican, which doesn't exist anymore. There are a handful of Republicans who have larger political aspirations, who are trying to get rid of Trump because they see we cannot continue to go down this road. It is not going to work out for us. But sorry, the voters are more interested in the Trump brand of politics when it comes to Republican primary voters. Bill Cassidy of Louisiana voted to impeach Donald Trump. Here is his reasoning that he gave to Chris Wallace on Fox News.
This is Stephanopoulos.
I'm sorry, Stephanopoulos.
Voted to convict President Trump because he is guilty. Why do you think he's guilty? When did you make up your mind?
So I listened very carefully to all the arguments, but if you describe insurrection as I did, as an attempt to prevent the peaceful transfer of power, we can see the president for 2 months after the election promoting that the election was stolen. People still tell me they think Dominion rigged those machines with Hugo Chavez from Venezuela. That is not true, and all the news organizations that promoted that have retracted. He then scheduled the rally for January the 6th, just when the transfer of power was to take place, and he brought together a crowd, but a portion of that was transformed into a mob. And when they went to the Capitol, it was clear that he wished that lawmakers be intimidated. And even after he knew there was violence taking place, he continued to basically sanction the mob being there. And not until later did he actually ask them to leave. All of that points to a motive and a method, and that is wrong. He should be held accountable.
It's important to note that Bill Cassidy just won re-election. None of these Republicans who decided to vote yes on impeachment are really in any political danger. Susan Collins just won re-election. Murkowski, she's made this her brand, as has Mitt Romney. But Cassidy, he actually may face problems if the Republican Party doesn't have a short memory, because he was just formally censured by the Louisiana party. So there are a lot of inter-party machinations going on here. But most of the party, I will add, is still in lockstep with Trump. And no one is more emblematic of that than Lindsey Graham, because they recognize that, hey, the Republican Party, throughout its entire tenure in the modern history of the country, what they have done best, the way they have held on to power, has been by just appealing to the base, throwing red meat, doing whatever they can in order to make sure the Republican base is appeased. And they've had a lot of success doing that. Donald Trump was the inevitable creation of that kind of politics. But most of these Republican senators know nothing else. And they know that they'll face retribution from voters if they don't continue to do what they've learned and go down that path. And Lindsey Graham has no other mode at this point. Here he is talking to Chris Wallace.
And we shouldn't have followed him, and we shouldn't have listened to him, and we can't let that ever happen again. Senator, is Governor Haley wrong about Donald Trump's future in the Republican Party?
Yeah, Donald Trump is the most vibrant member of the Republican Party. The Trump movement is alive and well. People believe that he brought change to Washington. Policy-wise, it was long overdue. All I can say is that the most potent force in the Republican Party is President Trump. We need Trump plus. And at the end of the day, I've been involved in politics for over 25 years. The president is a handful, and what happened on January 6th was terrible for the country, but he's not singularly to blame. Democrats have sat on the sidelines and watched the country be burned down for a year and a half, and that said a damn word. And most Republicans are tired of the hypocrisy. So, no, Nikki's wrong about President Trump. North Carolina, the biggest winner, I think, of this whole impeachment trial is Laura Trump. My dear friend Richard Burr, who I like and have been friends to a long time, just made Laura Trump almost a certain nominee for the Senate seat in North Carolina to replace him if she runs. And I'll certainly be behind her because I think she represents the future of the Republican Party.
Dude, you might want to get her name right first. It's Lara Trump. If she's the future of the Republican Party, you might want to figure that part out. But I will reiterate these poll numbers. Trump, 53% for Republican primary voters in 2024. Now, I doubt he'll run. I don't think he wants to face the prospect of defeat again, and he's also profoundly lazy. You can't underestimate that about him. But Mike Pence, 12%, Donald Trump Jr., 6%. Nikki Haley then comes in at 6%. Mitt Romney at 4%. But then Ted Cruz, you go down the list, right? all of these Trump-adjacent people, the people that have surrounded Trump, that have enabled him, that have embraced his style of politics, they are the people that have won over the hearts and minds of Republican voters. And so Lindsey Graham's not very convincing at it because he's a beta, and so he just follows and regurgitates whatever Trump says. So he's not going to appeal to the authoritarian Republican base. There's no question about that. That's done. That's over with. They've already tried that. He did in 2016 when he was vociferously against Trump, and now, of course, he's up his butt. But there's no way to avoid this. And Nikki Haley, I think, will fail spectacularly if she tries to run for president because the base won't embrace her. Excuse me, I have something caught in my throat. But let's head to Matt. We have some ads that Sam pre-recorded, right?
Yes, we do. Give me 1 second here. They just disappeared off the screen right as I was trying to help you out with that cough here.
Issues, guys. I'm aware that I sound. Listen to what my voice sounded like on the YouTube stream for a second. It's a little creepy. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a conversion issue. We're gonna have it sorted out by tomorrow. So maybe and also for the podcast listeners, that will be all sorted out too. So just to give us a little bit of, we're testing some stuff out. Hopefully, it'll be better in the long run. But anyway, here's Sam with some advertisements. And this might be lower on octave too.
Thanks, Emma. You'll appreciate this ad. It is for Liquid IV. You all know about their popular hydration mix. Emma is totally sold, and apparently her mom is too. Well, Liquid IV's energy multiplier is an absolute game changer, and it gives you that extra boost we all need. One stick is like drinking 2 cups of coffee, and it's an all-natural alternative to processed energy drinks for a sustained energy boost throughout the day. Look, Emma's a huge fan of Liquid IV, although she tells me that there's one flavor she doesn't like, but she likes like 4 or 5 of the other flavors. For me, I am almost now exclusively on this energy multiplier. It's matcha, it's green, and it tastes great, but it is a great coffee substitute for me. Whenever I'm doing a show, I'm pounding this stuff. The energy multiplier, it's a healthier alternative to traditional energy drinks and coffee. There are no artificial flavors, no artificial preservatives. Premium matcha and green energy blend tastes delicious. Provides a lasting energy boost. Liquid IV's cellular transport technology delivers an optimal ratio of nutrients for more efficient uptake. So that means I'm getting my, caffeine intake without dehydrating myself like I might when I'm drinking coffee. Use the energy multiplier to help power your mornings, long days at work, maybe your 3-hour podcast. If you're doing that, I can recommend the energy multiplier. It's non-GMO, it's vegan, it's gluten-free, it's dairy and soy-free. Plus, the company has donated over 10 million servings globally. Check it out, folks. It is honestly the fuel of the Majority Report, at least when Sam Seder is concerned. Grab your Energy Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the promo code MajorityRep. Not Majority Report, Majority Rep at checkout. That's 25% off anything when you order and you use promo code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. Start fueling your adventures today at liquidiv.com. Promo code MajorityRep. Also, these days, a lot of people have been avoiding going to see a doctor, but we probably all have something that we should see a doctor for at this point. No more putting it off. Making a doctor's appointment feels like it's giving you anxiety or that some type of chore. PlushCare is here for you. They make it super easy to schedule an appointment and see a doctor so you can prioritize your health hassle-free and anxiety-free. PlushCare provides virtual doctor appointments through your smartphone or your computer. You can just pick a time that works for you. You book an appointment online. No more waiting on hold. No more sitting in a crowded waiting room or standing in a crowded waiting room or feeling anxious in a waiting room at all, period. PlushCare, you can be diagnosed, treated, and even have a prescription sent to your pharmacy of choice within minutes. PlushCare accepts most major insurance carriers. It's available in all 50 states. So every one of you who are listening to me in this country can use it. If you're having difficulty managing your emotions during COVID, not surprising, well, PlushCare doctors are available to help with that too. PlushCare makes it easier than ever to take care of yourself inside and out. You can start your membership today. Go to plushcare.com/majority. You start your free 30-day trial. That's PlushCare, PlushCare.com/majority for a 30-day free trial. PlushCare.com/majority. Look, your health is too important to put off. Here is an easy way to make sure you're in good shape. Check it out, plushcare.com/majority. And lastly, businesses have had to be a little bit flexible this year. Not surprising. Work from home. Pivot from your business models for long-term survival and growth. We're all doing it. Half the time, you got to put tarps up or whatever it is. You're streaming stage shows. If you're doing, I don't know, if you're like a club, concerts online, clothing companies producing N95 masks, everybody's got to be flexible, right? Well, you're in charge for hiring for your businesses. These pivots have made your job even more challenging, believe me, especially if you have to hire for brand new roles. Well, there's one place you can always count on to make hiring faster and easier, and that is called ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. When you post a job on ZipRecruiter, it's sent out to over 100 top job boards with one click. And then ZipRecruiter's powerful technology finds people with the right skills and experience for your job, and then they actively invite these people to apply. How do I know this is the case? Because I use ZipRecruiter to make one of my best producing, in fact, the last producing hire I made. Brendan. That's where we found Brendan. And he told me that ZipRecruiter basically came out and dragged him in. Good thing, too. Now, I will say this. We got a bunch of great applicants. Just Brendan came in and literally said, I know what you do. My last job, I literally had to filter out your YouTube videos because I was looking for the stuff that you cover, and I didn't want to see you. That's all it takes to get hired by me, incidentally. Say something that's could be taken as somewhat derisive. But the point is, it's no wonder that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Incidentally, that's not a recommendation when you go in for your interview. I would not do that with other employers. But anyways, you can see for yourself. Right now, try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. MAJORITY. Majority, as in Majority Report. Let ZipRecruiter take finding qualified candidates off your plate so you can focus on growing your business and doing your work. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, back to Emma.
Thank you, Darth Sam. I mean, is this where I can make my bread and butter on Bane impressions, right? While we still have this YouTube conversion issue. Luke, I am your father. All right. We're going to try and get this fixed. We're going to take a quick break, and then hopefully our audio issues will be fixed, and we're going to head into Sam's interview. Sam did this wonderfully pre-taped interview with, I have the name right here, Robert Pape. He wrote a piece in The Atlantic on why the Capitol rioters are different in terms of their terror. So, Matt, take it away.
Joining me now, Robert A. Pape. He is the professor of political science at the University of Chicago, specializing in international security affairs. He is also the founder of the Chicago Project on Security and Threats. And we should also mention that this study was undertaken as well with Kevin Ruby, who is a senior research associate at the Chicago Project on Security and Threats, CPOST. Robert, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Glad to be here.
Okay, so the Capitol rioters aren't like other extremists. Let's just start with your methodology in how you came to these conclusions.
So at CPOST, we have been doing demographic studies, and I've been doing demographic studies on individuals engaged in political violence for decades. Probably the largest one before this point was when I studied 462 suicide terrorists in 2005. That remains to this day the largest demographic profile of suicide bombers. And more recently, just before this, in 2017, I led our team at CPOST, where we studied what are now several hundred perpetrators for ISIS who were arrested in the United States and put through U.S. courts in the United States. In these studies, we have a very straightforward methodology. That methodology is to look for all the government, in this case, court documents that we can find on the individuals, and then also all the media reports that we can find. And we have just tremendous access to, for American perpetrators, people arrested in the United States, tremendous access to court documents. So the moment someone is arrested in the United States, there's a criminal complaint, there's a statement of facts, there are affidavits of various kinds, and those are public. Those are not secret in any way. And so we are able to go through those. Now we need research teams to do it. So in this particular one with the Capitol Hill insurrection, it's been 22 people so far. And then once we go through the court documents, we're also able to go through all of the newspapers in the United States through these awesome databases that are produced, that are updated every day, to catch all the stories about here's the hometown person who then was arrested for a Capitol Hill insurrection. So we have an enormous volume of documents here, thousands and thousands of the now 244 individuals who have been arrested for the Capitol Hill insurrection. And I'm specifically for breaking into the Capitol or breaking into the Capitol grounds, those hanging right off the building, if you see what I mean, Sam. So we're really, we've been doing this for years. The research team's very good at this. We know how to verify, double check. And so this is really just a tremendous wealth of information to bring to bear to the country.
Okay, I have two questions in regard. One is, do we have a sense of how many people were there? Like we're not talking like 100,000 people who were there, the whole rally, obviously. But how many do we have? Like, can you? So
there's two theirs, Sam. There's two theirs. There's inside the Capitol building, or hanging off of the Capitol building. So that's 800 people. Okay. That's the best estimate we have. That comes from federal authorities. And that's we have every reason to think that that's really quite a good estimate from what we can tell. There's a second there, which is who were in the surrounding streets, like all the way up Pennsylvania Avenue, sort of that there. The best estimate is 50,000. Now that comes from a combination of police reports and journalist reports. We have studied crowd size in the United States. So the study of the Capitol Hill insurrectionists is not the first time I've studied political violence in the United States. I started studying this seriously last April. I became very concerned last April that because of the failures of the federal government with COVID, we would have mass deaths due to COVID, and that would lead to a breakdown in social trust, leading to political violence. So even though we didn't have any in April, not large amounts anyway, I started to reorient these large research teams we have at CPOST. So then we were had already had the teams together to study all of George Floyd protests in the top 50 cities in America. So we have one of the largest studies of that. We also did a study of the 108 individuals arrested by the FBI who were right-wing individuals for deadly violence from 215 to 220. So we're very used to estimating and seeing how estimates are done of, say, crowd size. Okay. And so this time, so those are two. There's 800 in the Capitol, and then 50,000 in the vicinity of the Capitol.
So approximately under 2% of the people who showed up at the rally, as it were, ended up actually, attacking the Capitol in some way, or however you want to characterize it.
That's right. That's right. You've got it just right, Sam. We're never really, I think, going to be able to survey the 50,000 who were there, because many just left, of course. So what we are able to do is survey those arrested, and that's what we've done.
Let me ask you just one more question on that cohort. The ones that are arrested. How do you account for, in the context of, like, because you're trying to figure out who these people are as a class, as a cohort, how do you account for the mechanism in which they're arrested, right? Which I presume is like a function of largely identifying them through social media, through them being on video maybe, or them videotaping themselves and posting that maybe, like, I was there, or I'm on Facebook.
Yeah, so the mechanism by which they're arrested varies by arresting agency. So they were arrested by 3 different agencies, each with their own investigation programs, so to speak, or protocols, and over different periods of time. So there's those arrested by the Capitol Hill Police and the Washington, D.C. Police on the day itself. That is, they were in the building, they came out, they got arrested by those 2 entities. And then there's those arrested by the FBI, which are still coming to this day. They have very different investigation protocols. And so what we're able to do, Sam, is partition the data. And we can see, well, is pool 1 different than pool 2, the FBI pool? That allows us to ask questions like, how do they differ on all the different dimensions that you're seeing in our study? And the fact is, they don't, you see.
That is I was trying to figure out if your pool in some way gets tainted because of the way they're apprehended, and you've just answered that question. So it felt like you anticipated that question.
But Sam, this is a great question on your part. It shows you're really following sort of the details of how this could be done. But also, this would be a normal question that we would address in not just the Capitol Hill insurrection. This is just, so you're talking to, one of the people in the world who really does this for, kind of a living, so to speak. So this isn't the first time we would have done it. It's not the first time we would have confronted this kind of a puzzle.
Fair enough. And all right, so there were 4 major 4 findings that you suggest stand out, at least. And let's go through those. And maybe I don't know that we're going to have time today, but I would be curious about what your findings are on the George Floyd protest too, frankly.
Well, you're just going to have to, there's a whole study of the impact of DHS on violence in Portland compared to Seattle. So there's a whole, that's not a 1 minute thing. Okay.
Part 2 of this, but okay. You start off that the first finding that you had that stands out was that you write the attack on the Capitol was unmistakably an act of political violence, not an exercise in vandalism or trespassing amid a disorderly protest that had spiraled out of control. Explain what that means and how you know.
Yeah, so many people are putting this in the context of a criminal framework. Was this like murder? And this is what you're seeing right now in the Senate trial, because you have lawyers who are former prosecutors who prosecute for murder. And so they're basically trying to put this in a criminal context. Well, that's not really the way, certainly that's not my background. My background is political violence. And what's special is the motive, the nature of the motive. So in this case, the motive was clearly political. And why do I say that? It's because we have the testimony of the insurrectionists themselves in the court documents. And this testimony is not just kind of loose things they said in the media, but interviews they gave to the FBI, which they are accountable for. So this testimonies, we have dozens and dozens of individuals saying different versions of. They came to the Capitol or to the Washington on January 6th because President Trump called them to. They marched on the Capitol because President Trump told them to stop the counting, the constitutionally mandated process of counting the Congress certifying the vote for President Biden. There's no other, it's not like that's just one of 6 or 7 different motives going on here. That's that's just it. There's not a comparison motive to really point to, Sam, in this case. In this case, it's just absolutely clear that the motive here was a political motive. And that is very important to understand, that we're in a domain of political violence. And this is just a different type of framework than understanding like criminal trespassing. Of course, it's against the violence is against the law. That's not different. It's not like, well, it's political, it's okay. That's not it. It's that this isn't driven by personal motives. This is driven by this political motive. And that's what's really special, because we just haven't had an explosion of political violence like this sort of in our lifetimes in the United States. This is a really large amount of political violence that occurred on January 6th, and it's a prominent amount. Meaning the Capitol itself.
How is, the use of political violence or political, and the violence I think is obvious, but the political here, how does that work? I don't want you to go into, in depth into like the George Floyd protests or the BLM protests, but would you, is that the same thing? Like how
the violence in the George Floyd protests? So we've studied these in detail, as you know, the violence is happening only in about 5 or 6% of the protests. We could talk about this in great detail, but that too is overwhelmingly political violence. There is some what you might call normal criminal violence with respect to the George Floyd protests, which is the looting and vandalism that, of course, your listeners will be very familiar with. That's not what I mean by political violence. That too occurred during the George Floyd protests, so that was an additional factor. But the George Floyd protests here were overwhelmingly motivated toward a political cause, such as defunding the police or reforming the police. And we know that in the same way, which is we know that through the slogans, essentially the testimony of the individuals doing the protest that led to them being violent. The difference here in degree of violence, though, is also something to point out. So the George Floyd protests were overwhelmingly non-lethal violence with no indication that lethal violence was intended. Here, in the case of the Capitol, that is on display in the trial in the Senate, and it's quite clear that from the crying of, hang Mike Pence and so forth, that there's much more lethal intent here with the Capitol Hill insurrection than we ever saw with really those sort of in those top 50 cities, many thousands of protests in those top 50 cities in America with the George Floyd protests. So this is a whole degree of more violent political behavior than we saw with the George Floyd protests.
So we have lethal intent is a distinguishing mark, and and let me ask you this, if this is a classification as well, that when you describe people saying we're there to stop the certification of the vote, that seems to me to be very like tactical or specific, like almost like it's almost like we went to blow up a bridge as opposed to. I mean, is that a protest in that instance? Like I perceive, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I perceive BLM protests to be protests. There are violence that may maybe there may be violence that happens in those protests, but it's non-directed. It is more of like a sort of a flailing. As opposed
so just to parse the two pieces again, political versus degree of violence. Okay. So the political element is about changing politics in your favor. So what the stopping of the vote for President Biden, that's not a small tactical thing. That's how President Biden becomes president. So if the insurrectionists are able to stop the vote count, then Trump remains president. So this isn't just a window dressing. This isn't just, this is just a minor thing. I mean, who cares if Congress certifies the vote? President Trump would be president today.
No,
hold it. Yeah, I understand that you may disagree and say people would reject that.
No,
but this is a much bigger deal. Yeah.
I'm saying constitutionally speaking, that if there's no vote that's certified, his term ends on January 20th.
He would claim that he had, well, let's put it this way. You would then have two presidents. So let me back up to be more precise.
I don't mean to
You would have two presidents, each of whom claiming they were the legitimate president. No body like the Congress having certified one over the other. So you would have a Venezuelan-like situation, exactly what we have in Venezuela, which is person A claiming to be the legitimate president, President B. It's now out of the constitutional framework because we're past January 20th. So this is not in the Constitution of how you resolve this. You see what I mean? So this is what I meant. I should have been a little more precise, Sam.
Okay. I'm sorry. And I don't mean to be picky about that. I guess
That's okay.
For me, it was just the question of is like I'm trying to differentiate from the perspective of the phenomenon, not even the implications of it, but like one is I'm going over there to do something mechanical. It'll have big impact without a doubt. I mean, obviously. But one is very sort of specific mechanical. The other is I'm trying to signal to society that we've had enough, broadly speaking. It's not even like I'm going to, change this specific lever to change these things. We're calling for reform as opposed to a specific, we're going to stop a specific act.
Yeah, it's a degree of control over the political outcome. So in the case of the Capitol Hill insurrection, it's truly the insurrectionists imposing their decision on the rest of the country. In the case of the George Floyd protests, what you're saying is, well, what they're doing is calling on political leaders to change their minds, but still operate through the constitutional systems we have in our country. They're not imposing or overthrowing the Constitution and imposing their will on the outcome. The insurrectionists are different. That really is imposing their will. And that's that difference in gradation of control. And I think it makes it far more serious of a political act because they're absolutely overturning the Constitution.
So your second major finding is that a large majority of the suspects in the Capitol riot have no connection to existing far-right militias, white nationalist gangs, or other established violent organizations. And you said that in your studying, you erred on the side of inclusion. And so even having done that, there's no affiliation there. I don't know if there's much to expand on there, I guess, except for then the third finding. Which...
Well, hold it. Just to give you a little bit of update here. So that what you're reading was based on 193 people arrested. To this moment as I speak, so we're adding cases every day, it's 244, so an extra 50. And of course, many of your listeners will have heard that yesterday we arrested 5 Proud Boys. And so they might say, well, wait a minute, does the findings change? Well, the answer to that is today with 244, 12% of the Capitol Hill insurrectionists were members of organized right-wing militia-like groups like the Proud Boys or the 3 Percenters or the Oath Keepers. 88% not. And that's very different here. That's something very different that we've seen with past right-wing extremists, where the proportion that are part of these organized militia-like groups, like, again, the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, is far higher. I mean, if you include gangs, it's near 50%. So it's a very striking difference between the two pools.
And so what is that? What are the implications of that? Does that mean that that this is, I mean, what are the, I mean, that's.
What this means is the violence is not easily reducible to the usual suspects we've been worried about for decades. This is new. It's a new political movement with violence at its core. It isn't just, the collection of the bad, elements, and now they all kind of came together. There was some of that. That's a very small part of this layer cake, however. What this means is this is a new political movement. It's a mass movement. It's reached into the mainstream. As you know, our third finding other findings have to do with 40% of them are business owners or from white collar occupations, such as, lawyers, doctors, attorneys, accountants, et cetera. And so what you have here, Sam, is a very different animal. And we need to realize here that means that our normal solutions that we would draw out of our, hip pocket, they're just not going to work in this case.
And so, in other words, it's not like a question of we're going to send the FBI out to infiltrate these organized groups because we know more or less where they are and who they are, and we can find them there. This is this is mass political movement, which is very different than we've had before. President Trump, clearly a leader of this new movement. And now he's a leader with demonstrated support for extra-legal behavior on the part of a mass of people in this movement. So this is very, very different. You wouldn't be able to point to a single leader in the last 30, 40 years of, say, the militia movement or the militia movement in, say, Michigan, much less the rest of the country, and say, there's that leader. There's that leader who really, when he calls, they come. When he says go back, they go back. That's not the case. That's the case today. It's very different. And so it's very important not to think, oh yeah, this is no problem. We're just going to roll it up like we did the militia movement in the 90s, and we're going to go back to a normal state of affairs here. No, this has really long-term consequences. This is, you're almost fighting. I mean, I don't know if it's organized. I don't know if it's coherent enough to say an ideology, but it seems to me that what you're saying is that it's analogous to fighting an ideology as opposed to a group.
It's a movement as opposed to an organization or an ideology. It's a congealing movement. It is not fully congealed, which is why we want to study now. We want to understand now. It's important to know the who we're dealing with in the new movement so that we can develop viable solutions that will truly work for America. And we want to do it now, not a couple years from now when it gets worse, because now's the time we might be able to nip it in the bud. But we're not going to be able to nip it in the bud unless we know who we're dealing with. That's just not going to work. And so that's why we're so dedicated to this thrust of really highly granular, focused research here on this information, because that's really what's going to take us forward as a country.
Is it your sense that this movement is Trump contingent?
We don't know yet. So we're working. So we have more. So we are now engaged. So we've just done the Capitol Hill, the first cut, so to speak. We've learned a substantial amount in what we now know, Sam. We haven't even talked about where they come from politically, the different districts yet, but we need to know more to thicken up that understanding. And so some of the questions you're likely to ask me, well, what about this? What about that? Here, these are things we're launched at CPOS into a 3 to 6 month thrust of research based on these the first set of findings here. We can now go forward. And so I'm not saying that, we'll know everything in 3 to 6 months. We know a substantial amount now. We'll know substantially more, and we'll be in a far better position here to really think about serious new solutions. And we don't have to wait 3 years for those, but we do need to spend some time really doing more work here before we just kind of, shoot from the hip, so to speak.
No, fair enough. That is, we need more information is perfectly.
And we need more information precisely because it's so new.
Right.
It's so new. It's not like we just know this and now we're just, opening the file drawer on Proud Boy and we got it all. That's not that's not going to do it here.
What about Q? Have you come across any, is Q?
So QAnon makes up QAnon supporters, those that are identifiable QAnon supporters, make up 8% of the insurrectionists. There were, the 244. That compares to 17% in the country as a whole by recent surveys. So in other words, QAnon is less prevalent in the Capitol Hill insurrection than in the country as a whole. It's also important to know that QAnon supporters exist not just in the Republican side, but also among independents, 12%, and also among Democrats, 13%, according to latest national polls. So a lot of people want to reduce this either down to, the Proud Boy-like militias or micro cults like QAnon. The fact of the matter is these are just reaching for, sort of quick answers here. And there are elements of it, of course, but we need to do more work here about the 90% that are not fitting those bills. If we're really, because that's really the surprise here.
I am really surprised that the Q numbers, A, are that low in the Capitol.
Yep.
B, that high outside the Capitol. I mean,
exactly.
The country. I didn't know that. Okay. So then the fourth one, and I have to say, I did not find this as surprising as maybe, and I'll tell you why, just from my radio experience.
Please. Yeah.
The fourth finding you found was that most insurrectionists do not come from deep red strongholds. People familiar with America's political geography might imagine Capitol rioters having marinated in a place where they're unlikely to encounter anyone from the opposite side of the spectrum, but it seems to be the opposite. And I will tell you that from my experience in doing, liberal left talk radio, it was the localities where people were surrounded by conservatives that they were most attached to the radio show. Because they were sort of felt like they were isolated without it.
So Sam, having done a lot of talk radio over my 30 years and met hosts like you as well, here, I'm also not surprised that you in particular are not surprised, because I know how much you really understand your audience in a very fine-grained way. And how much you connect with them often on also emotional levels here in ways that our other media really don't. And that's one of the things about call-in shows. So I've often liked doing call-in shows when you can do them for like an hour. And now I don't have that time necessarily right this second, but I'm just saying that it's really, and you learn a lot about your audience. Well, that's not true for 99% of the people in America, Sam. That's not true for not just your ordinary person who's not a talk show radio host for years, but also in other media as well, to have that much of a deep interaction. Second thing to say is I wasn't that surprised either to see that 57% of the insurrectionists are coming from counties Biden won. That too, that was, you might say, well, it's surprised. Well, actually, I do the same kind of analysis of where do the insurgents come from in Iraq? Where do they come from in Afghanistan? They're not coming from the areas that are the most homogeneous. They're coming from the areas that are the most mixed. And that's why when the violence gets going, it takes a while to get going. But when it gets going a lot here. So it's not a it's actually I don't want to overly do this, but it's not a calming thing to know this, because it is a pattern that we see around the world in some pretty intense situations. Now, we're nowhere near them. We're nowhere near those kinds of situations. So I'm not bringing it up to say, oh yes, we are just like this or just like that situation abroad. What I'm saying is we're in the early stages of it. We're seeing things that are very familiar to folks like me who have been studying political violence in this level of granularity for years around the world. And that means we need more effort to understand this movement, because it is a different movement. We don't see in those other places that I'm talking about 13% are business owners. So we don't have that category in our data, if you see. So this is not exactly the same. And so what we got to do is understand American political violence today, not assume it's like the past, but to do it now so that we can try to create viable solutions that work for America.
Okay, and I know you have a hard out in a moment.
I gotta go. Yeah.
Those four top things. Is there anything else that has come up since that piece in the Atlantic? I mean, I would love to have this conversation again about a broader one, actually. But well,
the big thing I'd like to leave by telling your audience is that on a weekly basis, it'll commonly be a Friday or a Monday, we are updating all of the data, and we're adding new analysis on our website. So if you can just find the University of Chicago Project on Security and Threats and look up research, or follow the threads here. If you can put a link somewhere for your audience, if you follow the same links in the Atlantic piece, they will take you to the most recent update, which is more data on the same stuff. And each week there's more. So what this week we just did was QAnon. So that wasn't in the first one. We're going to be doing more stuff like that, Sam, as we go forward here, because this is an ongoing issue. We're able to do more and more analysis, not just data collection. And that's going to turn out to be very valuable. But it's not like there's just going to be one new thing. We need to really incrementally build this. And so that's what we're doing as I speak.
Robert A. Pape, professor of political science, University of Chicago, also the founder of of the Chicago Project on Security and Threats. C-Post, thank you so much for your time today. Fascinating stuff. And like I say, we will have a part 2 of this in the coming months. Appreciate it.
Great. Absolutely. Good to be on your show, Sam.
We are back, and we are hopefully sounding normal. I thought that was a great interview. Sam pre-recorded that one, so I will be having guests on for the rest of the week, but we had to get that out there for you guys. So again, hopefully our audio issues are fixed. It sounds okay, Matt?
Yes, I believe we are back to normal.
Okay. So before we head into the fun half, where Nomi is going to be joining us, which will be awesome, that I have a little sidekick. I'm sure she loves being referred to as a sidekick, but somebody to bounce ideas off of on my first day hosting the show solo. I wanted to talk about the horrible storms that we're seeing throughout the country, and of course the insane right-wing response to it. So there has been a clamoring to politicize the storms throughout the country that we're seeing, particularly affecting Texas, where I believe around 2 million people still do not have power, and there have been at minimum 25 deaths accounted for, a majority of them in Texas. It's inherently political because all scientists, the majority of scientists, the credible ones, are saying that this is caused by a rapidly warming Arctic, which increases the severity and the frequency of these kinds of winter storms in places that don't normally see them, including in Texas. But now you have Breitbart, you have the Wall Street Journal, from, corporate right outlets like the Wall Street Journal to far right outlets like Breitbart, who are throwing it out there that it's the freezing of the wind turbines in Texas. It's because we relied too much on wind technology in Texas that they're experiencing these mass power outages. Now, let's be clear. Yes, there are frozen wind turbines in Texas right now, but that is completely counterfactual. In fact, Texas relies on natural gas at a rate that is much higher than other states in the country. So the wind turbine focus is purely political. Tucker Carlson, he went on TV, I believe, last night and said the windmills failed like the silly fashion accessories they are, and people in Texas died. By the way, if there were mass outages and mass deaths in states like New York or California that were run traditionally by Democrats, you would hear a more politicized critique about the people in power, but not for
right.
Carlson.
And I just want to say that's based on like imagery when like the actual Ryan Cooper has this tweet. The narrative that iced up wind turbines are behind the Texas blackout is total bullshit. In fact, wind was overproducing estimates yesterday. The problem is, we need to be clear, is failing gas infrastructure. Gas. This is from a business standard. Gas processing plants across Texas are shutting as liquids freeze inside pipes, disrupting output just as demand jumps. And oil production in the Permian Basin, the biggest U.S. shale play, is moderating as well as slow down or halt as well. So this is purely, the best defense is a good offense. This is the fossil fuel industry and their mouthpieces like Steven Crowder going on the offense.
Oh, yeah. And they know that if they say it enough times, people believe it's true. Again, this is from Bloomberg. The main factors, frozen instruments at natural gas, coal, and even nuclear facilities, as well as limited supplies of natural gas, he said, are the main factors in this was as according to Dan Woodfin, a senior director for the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. They operate the state's power grid. They're basically saying that the main factors are frozen natural gas, coal, and nuclear plants. Like that's it. It's not these wind turbines. But
here's just one more, because I think it does bear, because this is such a concerted effort. You see this everywhere now. But NYC, DSA, eco-socialists, fossil fuel companies are trying to use the energy shortage. We know the reality is that 26 out of the 30 gigawatts of energy shortage was because gas couldn't be delivered. And we can go to this tweet here. Confidential info from a market participant, ERCOT. I think that's the Texas grid. But yeah, 30 gigawatts of capacity offline.
That's the guy I just quoted. Or the
Oh, is it? Right, right.
Or the organization that I just quoted. Yeah.
26 gigawatts of thermal, mostly natural gas, which can't be fracked, which can't be delivered, which can't get fuel deliveries, which are being priorities for heating loads. So this is a gas fossil fuel infrastructure failure.
Exactly. So with all of that context, Fox got the memo. This is going to be their talking point for what's happening in the center of the country and in Texas and in the Southeast. Here is what they had to say. I believe, what's the name of this host?
Is it Harris Faulkner?
Yeah. All right. Here's their commentary on the winter storms.
Casey just reported millions of Americans in the cold and dark say the lack of power is because of green energy policies and the vilification. Is because of green energy policies.
Sorry, I just wanted to get who said
that. Say the millions of Americans in the cold and dark say.
The millions of Americans in the cold and dark. Maybe if they're in the cold and dark, they aren't the people we should be asking for the information. Like I'm talking to people. I know a lot of people in Texas. David Griscom, my co-host on Left Reckoning's family, has been without for a day and a half at least. And this obscuring of the problem that's what's really also keeping them in the dark. Just unbelievable.
Go back to that, because they're saying this just in, millions of Americans are saying this. There's no,
we convinced them.
Right. Well, there's no, and it's not even like, Matt, you're giving them too much credit. They're making it up.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Aren't saying this.
Casey just reported millions of Americans in the cold and dark say the lack of power is because of green energy policies and the vilification of oil, gas, and coal. Yeah. The stuff that really keeps you warm. Coming up, we're looking out for you. The energy wars.
Just psycho.
Yeah, psychotic. Many people are saying this. Many people are saying this. I mean, Fox is literally, they've gone past just regurgitating right-wing talking points from the top. They're now regurgitating Trump's mannerisms and his way of speech in the way that they're reporting the news. I mean, I would love to find how they came up with that line in their script for the show. Millions of people are saying that it's because we don't rely enough on this kind of energy production. This is a concerted effort, as Matt said before, that's coming from all right-wing papers, from Breitbart to the Wall Street Journal to Fox News, made its way to Tucker Carlson's monologue or whatever he's talking about on his white supremacist show. They are making a propaganda effort to blame what's happening in this country on the exact opposite of the problem, when, of course, we know that the intensity of these storms, the frequency with which they'll happen, it's only going to increase as we continue to rely on these systems that they're saying would have saved us. It's Orwellian, that's overused, but of course, just watch out for these propaganda efforts because you're going to hear more of this.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, PragerU, for instance, funded by Dan and Ferris Wilks, which are fracking billionaires. I mean, I'm from North Dakota. If you look at the companies that made the most out of North Dakota shale boom, it was Texan companies. Like, I mean, I don't know. This is to see. I mean, it's one thing to see people lie for Trump, right? But this is a civilizational sort of how we structure the economy lie. Like, this is papering. We decided we're going to bet on oil for like the last century, half century at least. And like, I don't know. It's pretty harrowing to see this amount of propaganda and all hands on deck coming to it. But this is the real game, folks. It's to protect fossil fuels. Yeah, exactly. All right, we are going to head into the fun half now. I appreciate everybody on YouTube who was watching live, bearing with us with the technical difficulties. Of course, this happens on my first day, and it had nothing to do with like anything either of us did. It just was a Zoom to YouTube glitch. So apologies for that. We're going to head into the fun half. Hopefully Nomi can get on. I know she's having some Wi-Fi issues right now. So talk to you guys soon. See you there.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Hello, and welcome to the fun half. I will be taking your calls, and I should have said, now that the fun half has started, I should have said before, I'm still getting used to it. Check out Matt's podcast and Left Reckoning and Literary Hangover. What's going on in your universe, as Sam would say, Matt?
We've got Grace Blakely on Left Reckoning, the Marxist economist, who has two really great books that are easily digestible. One is Stolen, which came out before the Corona crash, which talks about our highly financialized economy. And then she also did one on the Corona crash, which mentions Lenin a lot, which you don't hear in Thomas Piketty, for instance. So we're excited to have her on Left Reckoning. So yeah, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
How's David doing with all those? I mean, you mentioned his family's places out. How's he?
Well, he's here still. He's moving to Texas shortly, so he's still in Brooklyn. But yeah, I mean, he has family. I'm talking to my friend Chris and his buddies. Like they have power, but they know people in Houston that have been without for 36 hours. And it's like, I lost power. I missed a show earlier this year because I personally lost power in my apartment. But that was only for a day. And I could go into the hallway and charge my phone and stuff. I can't imagine. We talk about. I think it's good to emphasize the amount of death that this antiquated oil infrastructure is causing by not getting electricity to people. It's horrible. And people also brought up that Texas has its own grid that's independent of the national system. But the shortages in the Texas grid now are causing shortages all throughout the upper Midwest and the Midwest. So you can't really be isolated. It's a little metaphor or a parable for the electrical grids out there that no electrical grid is an island.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a metaphor for our society, man. Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. And of course, it doesn't take. It takes less than 24 hours for the right wing to have a concise and consistent messaging campaign behind just a natural disaster or things that are causing problems in the country. It's just unbelievable. So it looks like Nomi's Wi-Fi's out.
Nice. Tech day, yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like it'll just be, is Mercury in retrograde or something? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, the only way I know about that is from the Block Party song Mercury, but apparently stuff goes down when Mercury's in retrograde.
Apparently it's a technology thing. We're going to take calls, by the way, guys. So call in. I've called into the phones.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I wish I was in touch with the planets enough to know when certain planets are in retrograde.
Me too. And I was unnerved by the fact that apparently the entire horoscope calendar system is off. They miss that it should be a week back or a week in advance. And so, apparently my whole life has been a lie. That's how I live my life based on this.
Yeah, they adjusted it several years ago, right?
Yeah, apparently. I don't really know. But yeah, we're experiencing some technical issues, and obviously Nomi's experiencing it too, so we wish her well. Let me read some IMs, and although they just disappeared when I refreshed. Oh my goodness.
Could we play this Bernie Sanders asking the question that Republicans don't want to answer?
Yeah, you can intro that.
Yeah, so this is what the only question that's really relevant to me, that if I could talk to any Republican, was that election stolen? Because frankly, those to me are society or civilizational fighting words. When there is fraud that is overturning an election, I think that calls for certain actions by the population to make sure that that type of tyranny doesn't happen. So the question is to all the Republicans, do you still agree that Joe Biden may have stolen this election? Or are you saying because this is the James Austin Johnson Trump impression where he says, you have every right to be violent, but don't be violent, right? That's the game that Republicans want to play right now. So I want to pull up this Bernie Sanders asking this of oh shoot. Oh, here it is. Yes. So Bernie Sanders asks if Trump's lawyers, if they actually believe the election was stolen from him. And we'll get at this a couple times because Bernie's not allowed to butt in, but I want to play the one where Bernie butts in just to, because I think like, I'm glad that he's the one that's asking this question. So here's the first time.
House prosecutors have stated over and over again that President Trump was perpetrating a big lie when he repeatedly claimed that the election was stolen from him and that he actually won the election by a landslide. Are the prosecutors right when they claim that Trump was telling a big lie, or in your judgment, did Trump actually win the election?
The counsel for the former president have 2.5 minutes.
My judgment? Who asked that? I did. My judgment's irrelevant in this proceeding. It absolutely is. What's supposed to happen here is the article of impeachment is supposed to be...
The Senate will be in order.
Senators may not challenge the response.
The senators, under the rules, cannot challenge the content of the response.
House prosecutors.
All right, so we'll go down and he gives his actual response.
The House prosecutors have stated over and over again that President Trump was perpetrating a big lie when he repeatedly claimed that the election was stolen from him and that he actually won the election by a landslide. Are the prosecutors right when they claim that Trump was telling a big lie, or in your judgment, did Trump actually win the election?
In my judgment, it's irrelevant to the question before this body. What's relevant in this impeachment article is, were Mr. Trump's words insightful to the point of violence and riot? That's the charge. That's the question.
Now, I don't know how a legal expert would respond to that. Maybe 10 out of 10 constitutional law experts would say, yeah, that's not relevant, Bernie. It seems relevant to me. Like, if you are from the number one, propaganda organ, the bully pulpit, saying this election was stolen, and I just want to pull up another a tweet that he did, because again, people acting like there's some sort of debate about this, I think is kind of you're losing the fight already if you get on those terms. But just this Trump tweet. Yes, here it is. Oh no, yeah, here it is. Okay, sorry. I want to pull it up. It says, if a Democratic presidential candidate had an election rigged and stolen with proof of such acts at a level never seen before, the Democrat senators would consider it an act of war and fight to the death. Mitch and the Republicans do nothing, just want to let it pass. Now, whether you take that literally or seriously, how do you think, these new types of extremists that it previously mentioned by Pape in the interview, how do you think they read something like that, right? You have all these guys who are, immersed himself in 1776 Boston Tea Party mythology, and then told by the guy that they trust that he's having an election stolen and that people should fight to the death about it. Yeah, well, I mean, it's based on them trying to make the American public, or I guess in this case, the senators who are ruling on impeachment, believe that everybody, they're suckers, basically, that they aren't going to connect their words in their tweets to what the actions that took place there. Sorry, I got a little distracted by the phone system. Can you pick it up, Matt? Oh, I can't pick it up. Actually, I don't know how to do that. But yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, and also it's very fitting for Bernie Sanders to be the one asking this question, who was the subject of a lot of election interference himself. So it comes from a lot more of a sincere place when he dealt with actual biases and actual issues in the primary in 2016, where it's not election interference in the way that we see,
the United States interfering in, say, Venezuela, or in the coup that we see in Bolivia, or anything like that. But he did face extreme bias, and so I think that that's important, and just adds a little bit more context to it as well.
Especially with how many Republicans are, because people talk about the vast majority, 75-80% of Republican voters are still supportive of Trump. But that's actually like the amount that's very dissatisfied with him is becoming a problem. And I think like if we need to turn this question is, did Trump actually win the election? Was it stolen from him? Into the new like birth certificate thing. Because I think it's frankly more consequential than that was. I mean, the birth certificate thing obviously was there to animate racists, but this about like democracy, because you do have all these Republicans talking about we're a republic, guys, not a democracy. You have Mike Lee talking about rank democracy. I think this is it is a big lie. It is like Richard Evans and Daniel Bessner, different historians, have argued that this isn't fascism, and I think like people need to have a little bit more openness to that technical argument made by experts. But this is a big lie. That Trump won the election is a big lie, and I just repeat what I said. If the election was stolen, and if a hypothetical country has a dictator, like we support violent uprisings against people we call dictators all the time with the CIA. And I don't think that should be done, with foreign intervention. But when in any hypothetical country, if someone's just falsifying election results, then that becomes a problem that people can turn to. I think like this why Nelson Mandela has a whole section about nonviolent tactics or violent tactics such as sabotage and things like that, because ultimately when things do get that bad, that is the response that you can salute. But when it's lied about to get people to go senators.
There are attempts to thread the needle. It just became too narrow of a hole to thread that needle through, right? Where they want to use the violent rhetoric to their end to achieve some sort of electoral success without actually dealing with the consequences of that violent rhetoric. That's what I was trying to say earlier.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We want you to be so mad, but don't actually at these people who want to destroy your entire future and blow the country for your kids. Yeah. Be so mad at them, but of course don't. You have every right to be violent, but don't be violent.
Right, exactly. All right, I'm trying to call in now. Let's see if this works. Call in. There we go.
That's good.
Like the right noise, right?
That did.
All right, guys. Let me know if the phones are open. Not seeing any IMs. Let me try it from here. Again, really sorry about this. Now Nomi can't join. What's going on?
Well, I have Nigel Farage talking about Trump if you want.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay. So this is Nigel Farage. He's on Newsmax, which I need to know the power rankings for MAGA. Like, is Newsmax pulled ahead of OAN, or which one is?
OAN is the one. They just ran an entire music video dedicated for Trump in their news hour. So I think OAN kind of wins the unofficial race to the bottom.
Right. Okay. Well, here's Nigel on Newsmax with some idiot. I don't know. It's one thing to know all the Fox News people going through.
We're not going to waste our time learning these sycophants' names, except I know Greg Kelly on Newsmax. That's about it.
Right.
But from other fame.
Yeah. They look the same, frankly.
This impeachment process in America is now over. Donald Trump is the leader of all of us in the world that believe in the nation state and not artificial structures.
The nation state is a man-made structure, just to clarify that.
America is now over. Donald Trump is the leader of all of us in the world that believe in the nation state and not artificial structures. And huge speculation here, as there is in America. Will Trump run again? Should the Republican Party get rid of him? And I have to say, I thought to myself this morning, who else does the Republican Party have with his personality, his energy, his vigor, his charisma, and his courage? And if they can find someone better than that, the Republicans are doing very well. I suspect they can't.
Only 74, too. 4 years, he'll be Joe Biden's age in 4 years.
And here's a funny thing, Greg.
Yeah, look how great Joe Biden looks.
You know, all through my life, I've watched American presidents, British prime ministers, and they served their 4 years, their 8 years, and at the end of it, they've aged about 40 years. You know, I mean, and yet Trump, at the end of 4 years, looks more energetic and fitter than he did when he started. So,
I mean, frankly, probably getting better medical treatment and like doing better exercise.
I think physically, mentally, he is absolutely in shape to go for it again in 2024. And as I say, if the Republicans think they've got someone better, well, I tell you what, it's going to be one hell of a person.
So I saw him about a week ago yesterday, and you're right about he's lost some weight. He looks fantastic, and he's on top of everything, and his spirits are very high. And this is before he was.
I mean, again, what is with these like Republicans, like, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene? They want to like bang Trump. It's really hard to watch. It's bizarre. And also the whole age conversation. You guys were just slamming Joe Biden as senile, and then you're saying in 4 years Trump's going to be ready to go again.
I love the thing that conservatives are doing now where they're like, I just saw him and he's very happy. Which is like, that sounds like the message you give, like, hey, if you see my ex,
exactly,
tell her that I am just balling out lately. Like, I am very happy, very happy.
You're on the golf course all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
awesome. Why is that appropriate for a news broadcast?
Well, because they're trying, this is the part in every ex-president's life cycle, or where a president that lost an election, I guess. So a loser in election. So maybe not even ex-president, but like, remember when Mitt Romney was photographed pumping his own gas and everyone laughed at him?
Yeah.
Like Trump has to never appear in any situation that he hasn't been in before, because it will become the iconic, like, sad Trump in this place. So he can only be on the golf course or in like ballrooms, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like he's either just like sitting on his ass watching TV or at the golf course, so he might be able to avoid anything. Like, he doesn't do any menial tasks, so he's probably all set.
Yeah. Also, if he's actually lost weight, I'm worried about him. Like, that seems like it's probably a sign of illness more than a sign that he's turned over a new leaf in terms of physical fitness.
Yeah, I mean, is he, like, he might be expending too much energy on the golf course. Remember that report that he thinks that working out actually gets rid of the finite amount of energy you have in your body, like a battery? I mean, look, that could actually be quite unhealthy for him.
Right.
All right. I'm going to try and figure out these. Oh, wait. I got the calls. Matt, I did it.
All right.
Look at that. All right. Let's pick up some calls. Calling from a 672 number. 672. Let's try again. 672 number. Going once, going twice. 672 number. Can you hear me? All right, I'm going to try another one. Calling from an 847 number. Calling from an 847 number.
No.
All right, no.
And IMs aren't working either.
Call started showing up. Oh, wait. Hey, 847 number, are you there? I think they may be muted.
Interesting.
All right. Hold on, let me figure it out.
You don't think it's a board thing?
I don't think it is, no.
Okay.
I don't think it is. Sorry about this, guys. Again, this will definitely be addressed tomorrow.
Yeah, I wish I knew what the calls are muted means. I know Brendan is more familiar with the phone system than I am.
I know. Damn it. All right. Let me try to figure this out, and
I'll play another clip here.
Sure. Sounds good.
So Andres Arauz, the Ecuadorian presidential candidate, was on Democracy Now! I wanted to play a clip from that. We covered this on Left Reckoning too, and there's similar types of shenanigans being attempted against Arauz because of what he represents in terms of a continuation of the pink tide. You have a wrecker candidate, by my appearances, Yaku Perez, claiming that there's something improper with the way these elections are being run. I want to play this clip about what he's, and I mentioned Perez because I say he's a wrecker because of his stances on the different anti-Evo and Maduro. He takes the Organization of American States lines when it comes to American interventions in things like Bolivia, and also said that a universal basic income poor people would spend it on booze. So not my kind of leftist candidate. Andres Arauz is. He's a continuation of Rafael Correa's pink tide stuff, and here he is on a sort of the Venezuela question, I guess we can call it.
What is your position on Venezuela and President Maduro? You have the new Biden administration that talks about a presidency of Juan Guaido. Your thoughts on this? Where do you stand when it comes to Maduro and the Biden administration's position on Venezuela?
I stand with what basically the rest of the world has been saying, that we have to recognize the self-determination of the people of Venezuela. The EU has recently changed its position. I'm referring to the European Union. And most of Latin America has a clear agenda to keep peace in the region, right? So we think we need to talk about peace, democracy, development as the key issues in Latin America. We do not want foreign interference in our region. We do not want war in our region. We need peace, and that should be the main setting stone, the main platform for the conversation about Venezuela or any other country in the region. Now, we believe in regional integration. We believe in the unity of the Latin American peoples, where we have so much in common. And, when you see a powerful bloc such as the European Union, which are so diverse in terms of languages, the economic sectors, the cultures, and in Latin America, very similar agenda, very similar culture, very similar languages. And however, it's taken us so long for full regional integration. So that's where we're going to go forward with that. And we hope the Biden administration will stay away from trying to create division within the region. And on the other hand, we'll try to create those spaces for regional integration.
So yeah,
what's the status of that recount, by the way, Matt?
I'm looking now. I mean, it looks like he's the front runner. I mean, he's still been the front runner now. I mean, who he's going to run against, and whether there's some sort of lawfare thing that steps in based on the two candidates behind him complaining about some of the administrative stuff with the election. But he's got a real good chance to lead Ecuador. And I mean, he's only like 35 or 36, which is unbelievable to me. I'll support to Andres Arauz. Go check out the Democracy Now! Interview for more.
Yeah, Al Jazeera says with 99.99% of the votes counted by Friday, Perez had 19.38% of the vote, just behind Lasso, who got 9.74% of the vote.
That's good, too, because Perez probably matched up better with him in the runoff, from my understanding of at least of it. So, both of those guys, Lasso and Perez, I think Lasso is like legit just like the oligarch candidate, and Perez is running off of like a sort of, I mean, I've seen comment sections calling him like a Central American Obama, basically pro-neoliberal, but having taking certain positions that make him seem progressive. And, he's, I've seen Ben Norton on the Gray Zone said that he changed his name to Yaku from Carlos to kind of like add to that impression. So look, Andres Arauz is the candidate in Ecuador, and hope he is eventually president.
Yeah, I mean, Lasso just seems insanely right-wing, like former banker. That's all really I know about him. But really interesting. Obviously, you know a great deal about this more than me. But how the cloud of United States intervention in these Latin American elections just hangs over every piece of this, right? And the fear.
Yeah.
Ecuadorian politicians and people have that the U.S. is going to get involved.
Oops, Emma, you muted yourself.
The idea, Jesus, to that the idea that would be something that we would have to deal with, not, just put yourself in the shoes of somebody, a democracy activist, for example, in Latin America, trying to advocate for a left-wing candidate. Like, we have, cable news channels that are crying about Russian interference, but it's not really interference in the same way that the United States interferes. We are the dominant power in the world. And we have the ability to change elections and install leaders at our own disposal. Russia doesn't have that ability. But the amount that people get up in arms about Russian election interference, which they did try to do so through disinformation, right? Which is a fraction of what we do internationally. Just try to flip that around and imagine if every election we had, we worried that Russia was literally going to change the will of the people, literally, and not sort of, or pick a country. So that's just something I think, a kind of perspective that you have to have.
Yeah, Rafael Correa, the previous pink tide president in Ecuador, who's Arauz's owning as a advisor. His period was interesting because you have him, obviously with Assange, you have him saying to America, oh, you can have a base in Ecuador if we can have one in Miami. That sort of interesting thing. But then he also had, there's a good book on this called The Ebb of the Pink Tide, so Correa, there was a massive police strike in 2010. And Correa's line on U.S. intervention is not as sharp as I think on the left would want it, but it kind of gives the reality of the situation there, which is that, of course, the U.S. is infiltrating and has, frankly, unaccountable squads in Central America that, they're trained up at least. When the police riots happened in 2010, Correa had to get support from Hillary Clinton's State Department and say things like, we're not anti-imperial, anti-US or whatever, right? Ultimately, I think you're going to need to be, because I don't think you can because Correa wanted to draw a distinction between the official goings on of what the State Department's doing. And he said, actually, it's the CIA has all these out of control rogue agents, which I have all the time for hearing about that stuff too, because I think that definitely exists.
It's both.
It's both. Exactly. Right. And I think there's hope with Arauz and the way he talks about, Correa, that he and his generation understand that. And, with the return of Evo Morales, like that Ebb of the Pink Tide book came out when like things were down for Lula, things were down for Morales, like, now that we're getting a second turn at this, and I really think Central and South America the struggles going on there are very vital, and I think Arauz is someone that needs support.
Yeah, great.
How's that telephone looking?
We're gonna try this one more time. Call in. Go to the phones. I'm really hoping this works. Calling from a 704 number. Calling from a...
Hey.
Holy
Hello?
shit, thank God.
There we go.
How are you? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Jackson from North Carolina. How's it going?
How you doing, Jackson?
Living the dream. Got another edition of the Majority Report Fight Club for y'all.
Oh, nice.
So, we've got a new category here. Right-wing grifters. So on this matchup, we've got Ben Shapiro versus Dave Rubin. Who do you think's going to win?
Dave Rubin. I mean,
Yeah,
I would pick Ben. I would not pick Ben Shapiro in a fight against pretty much anybody. I don't know what you think, Matt.
No, Ben Shapiro is a guy who somebody photoshopped him to appear very short next to a Jordan Peterson picture. And then the Daily Wire didn't even notice that was the Photoshop version and started using that picture themselves in Twitter posts. So he's a minuscule guy. So unless he's willing to play really dirty, which I don't know, like I think Dave Rubin probably has some of that up his sleeve too.
Yeah. No, I think so. My initial thought was like Rubin is so shameless in like the way that he's branded himself or attempted to, that he would like play really dirty. But at the same time,
but he's really slow too.
Yeah, he doesn't have the quickest reaction time. He doesn't process information very well. But maybe in some sort of like primal survival thing. I mean, that's why he's in this right-wing business altogether, right? Is to make a ton of money. So he is some sort of like evolved early man in some ways.
No, I mean, if you really want the heavy hitters, you got to go with the NRA guys like Stinchfield and Bongino, because those guys. I mean, Bongino's legit like former Secret Service, so he's probably like could kick some ass.
Yeah, well, Bongino, I had him going up against Alex Jones. We can go ahead and have that conversation if you want.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to see it because I think Bongino would win, and I would 100% be going for Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Bongino would win,
animal.
But like talk about a dirty fighter. I mean, both of them would be dirty, but I think Alex Jones would be like biting ear off dirty.
Yeah. I don't know. I worry about it. I think Alex is a little bit top heavy.
He is. Well, he is shaped like an upside down triangle.
Like a giant Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jackson. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really do.
I really do love those visuals. Okay. Calling from a 917 number right in our backyard. Calling from a 917 number.
Hi, this is Alex in New York.
Hey, Alex from New York. What you calling about?
Well, same thing Jackson's calling about. I got Biden versus Bill Clinton and Ainsley Earhart versus Abby Huntsman.
Wow. Okay. Biden versus Clinton. Biden works out. Like, Biden has a Peloton, lest we forget.
Bill is very small. Like, he's also gotten small. This is not a knock against vegetarians, but Bill Clinton's diet made him look very, very like a tiny old man. I remember interviews like 3 or 4 years ago where it's like, holy crap, dude. Like,
yeah.
And I think that wouldn't be much of a fight. It looked like those like Rock'em Sock'em robots, but they're not very agile. And then one would topple over.
What, Alex?
Oh, I just said none of these are.
Yeah, none of these are.
They're not going to be much of a fight.
Right. None of these are prize fights.
I don't know. You could probably sell some tickets for Huntsman Earhart.
What's the next one? Huntsman versus
Ainsley Earhart.
I think I'm going to go with Ainsley.
I would go with Ainsley too, only because Abby her dad is famous. So I don't know where Ainsley's background is, but maybe she had to scrap a little bit more to get where she is.
Hey,
that's a big if.
She has to deal with Sean Hannity every night, so she knows how to hack.
Exactly.
Let's not talk about this anymore.
Oh, well, yeah. Anyway, all right. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Doing great.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, guys, about earlier. Still getting used to it. I think tomorrow I'm going to be fully immersed in the tech. Can I just... Matt, I just want to touch on this Lincoln Project stuff because it's driving me nuts. So we don't have a clip for this, but the Lincoln Project has descended into complete scandal. There have been accusations of mass sexual harassment. I believe one of the former top head honchos at the Lincoln Project was accused of sexting someone underage. I could be wrong. Maybe you want to fact check me on that. But then also just like the shady finances that we were hearing trickles about. There were millions and millions of dollars that were basically put into overhead. The executives at the Lincoln Project like they receive a way higher proportion in terms of money that goes directly to them than other organizations of similar stature. And I just want to end this conversation here. We all knew it was a grift, but there are still well-meaning liberals out there that want to pretend like the Lincoln Project wanted anything more than to enrich themselves and also, in my view, curry favor within a Biden administration by working on behalf of him, as every PAC does. So,
can I just say quickly, I see young men, but I don't see underage for John Weaver. So
yeah, thank you for correcting me there, because I didn't want to I don't want to make that accusation if it's not true. But there was still a lot of sexual harassment allegations and many more. So I just want to kind of do ding dong, the witch is dead here. Because we're done having this conversation. We're done letting the foxes into the hen house and then pretending they're gonna help us out. But there were a lot of people, well-meaning, cable news watching liberals, who watched and donated their hard-earned money to the Lincoln Project. Just have to be more strategic, have to be more targeted in the organizations that you support and the people that you do, and not just blind throwing buckets of money at people because they give you an emotional release in an ad. I mean, I just think that's the important lesson here.
I'm kind of shocked at how fast it's unraveling, and kind of relieved that it's unraveling and not, able to like sustain itself in the Biden era. Because I mean, that was always the main, threat of it, is that all these guys were going to get in Biden's ear. And so, I mean, fundamentally, we have to remember that these are Republicans, and anybody who has spent an entire life on that side and just changed recently probably is going to be abusing their power in some creepy way, or is, in other words, odious and grifting the money into like flipping houses like Steve Schmidt. I mean, look, if I'm a Republican consultant, that's what you do. You grift money so you can buy a new ranch out in Wyoming. I mean,
yeah,
like I love having the details of it. And I think it basically just, whenever somebody else tries to run this play, which is a very appealing play to try to run, I think the Lincoln Project hopefully, burn the bridges down.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, but unfortunately, until the Democratic Party voters accept that Republicanism is what needs to be defeated, we're still going to have this issue. I'm trying to find the appropriate soundboard for the death of the Lincoln Project. And so,
you are a douchebag.
Not the right one.
We do have Meghan McCain. Meghan McCain got on. I've been very hesitant to comment, but since my deceased father keeps getting invoked, I will say this. John Weaver and Steve Schmidt were so despised by my dad that he made it a point to ban them from his funeral. That's a weird thing to... I mean, I guess you make plans for your own funeral.
But that's okay to say. I mean, look, Steve Schmidt ran his 2008 campaign. Like, what does she think she's proving here?
Right, and like, I guess I haven't followed, the McCain saga. What happened in 2008 that makes him not able to be spit on if they were on fire by McCain now? Is it the Sarah Palin thing? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Schmidt maybe capitalizing on and like making the entire decision to pick Sarah Palin as, like making himself removed from that. I don't really know. And then catapulting that into some sort of grifting commentary career. Not exactly sure.
I mean, having an issue with that would be a bit rich for somebody who put his daughter on TV.
That's not what it is. I mean, again, she's just making it about petty personal issues between her father and other people. So I don't even understand, is his name being invoked in this conversation, or does she just feel the need to insert herself once again?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, it's being invoked probably just because it's on his resume. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's pretty much the number one thing he was known for in politics. But I guess, now that I've fallen in love with the soundboard, we'll get a shofar for the end. of the Lincoln Project. That's not really the appropriate usage.
No, more like the Stinkin' Project. That's what I would say.
All right. And then I just got to get to this clip, Matt, because I feel like we need to talk about it. This Nancy Pelosi clip.
Is this the one you put in Hangouts?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Give me one
I
second.
did. Oh.
All right.
All right. This is the fucking, like, 5th time I've heard this in a month from Democratic politicians, that we need a strong Republican Party. This is something we hear way too often from Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. And specifically, she keeps saying this and giving this needless credence to the Republican Party and the GOP, which has always been, and especially recently, a party that tries to inflict bad things upon the country. And that's how it needs to be looked at. But there are a lot of liberals, older ones specifically, who like to think of the Republican Party as something that could ever be a benevolent force in this country. And that's some sort of mythology that I'll never understand. Here's Nancy Pelosi.
I think our country needs a strong Republican Party. It's very important. And for him to try to have it every which way. But we will be going forward to make sure that this never happens again in terms of to investigate and evaluate what caused this, and both in terms of the motivation, but also in terms of the security that we have to have as we go forward, recognizing how inflaming even some of our elected officials can be.
Okay, so again, this is so frustrating because it ensures that none of this sickness that we're seeing will ever be rectified, because she's seeing this problem as a Trump-related vacuum problem, and the elected officials are some sparse actors that have been influenced by the rise of Trumpism and aren't an emblematic core emotional response as manifested in human beings in the party. And yet she continues to say that we need a strong Republican Party. She thinks it's important. In the voters' eyes, that is the strong Republican Party. Trump is 53%, the overwhelming favorite. Mike Pence is next in terms of who Republican voters want to run for president in 2024. Mike Pence has, 12% to Trump's 53%, and then his son is the third in terms of polling. You can't divorce the Republican Party from their voters. Their vision of strength was Trump. He's like this caricature of an alpha man that they saw. So that is their definition of a strong Republican Party. What is her view of a strong Republican Party? One that holds the Democratic Party's leftist flank accountable, but does it quietly so she doesn't have to do it herself? Is that her definition of it? Because the voters, they chose Trump. They chose Marjorie Taylor Greene. They chose Jim Jordan. They chose all of these horrific human beings, fascist light, whatever you want to call them, not to throw that term around loosely, but that's their definition of strength. And so her definition is, as it always is, entirely removed from what the voters want. She wants there to be this sort of playpen in the House and in the Senate where Republicans can kind of capitulate to their base, but they don't have to actually do their bidding. No, they are responsive to their base. And the problem is that you have chosen not to defeat them, but to enable them.
Yeah, I mean, this is why Andrew Cuomo and the IDC is, illustrative infinitely, because it's when the Democrats don't have Republicans, then especially particularly the corporate-leaning Democrats in leadership, when they don't have them, they invent them, basically, with the IDC. Like, they love having the right as a counterbalance against a left that they came into office never prepared to really deal with. And I don't know, I can't imagine a Republican saying we need a healthy Democratic Party, because that's depressing your own vote. when you say that. Like we need a healthy party in this country. We don't have a single one. We have two that work for basically oligarchy, one that's more owner oriented and one that's more management oriented, and the Democrats in the latter. But like, yeah, we need to get rid of the Republican Party. We need the Republican Party from like 170 years ago.
AKA an actually progressive party.
Abolitionist party.
Abolitionist party that came in the wake of a neoliberal Whig party that was not abolitionist enough and didn't want to deal with it. They were actually fine with slavery because it allowed them to continue playing the center. What does that remind you of? And again, we're not a third party. I don't want to speak for Matt here, but I don't see a third party as really a viable solution right now. But I do see disciplining Nancy Pelosi for this kind of talk as important. So that's why I want to cover this on the show today.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do think if there is a candidate, I remember getting an argument like when I barely knew what politics was on Facebook, like 2007, saying like the Republicans are the Whig party, right? But if you actually look at based on like demographics and that sort of stuff, everyone saw the Republican Party coming to an end. But when you actually look at the politics of it, it is the Democratic Party that's the Whig party, and it is this inability to confront evils baked into the economic system that might ultimately sink them. I think like third party it's a thing where like coming from North Dakota, where we had a successful like 100 years ago nonpartisan league run on both ballots, Democrat and Republican, to take state power. It needs to start locally. I'm very skeptical of third party runs that don't start with a local base of power, because I think often, whether it's Green Party and presidential candidates, which I don't trust, or the pro-weed people running against Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, like it's clear what this is. This is a reactionary front group, but actually like building power locally, like Kshama Sawant in Seattle, for instance, just to name one, like that. I think that's what's needed. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of we've talked about some of the unserious third parties before, where it's basically just posting.
We don't, the posting party. Anyway, I just that clip's a few days old at this point, but we were away, and that just like I don't know, that kind of stuff really grinds my gears. You want to take a few more calls?
Yeah, let's do a couple more, then we can maybe end a little bit early.
Sure.
Start a new tomorrow with the second round.
Yeah, I mean, between the deep voice and the stream,
the worst mistake, because we only I only look to see if things look all right when in the preview stage of the show. You don't expect all of a sudden people are going to be octave down.
Yeah, I know. All right. Calling from a 215 number. 215?
Hello, is this Emma?
This is Emma. How are you? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, this is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Oh, hi, Mitch McConnell. You just wake up?
Had a bit of a Dan Rather to your voice there, Mitch.
Sorry, there's not too much Dan Rather around here, but anyway, what I was calling in to tell you was, first of all, there's absolutely no reason why President Trump should have been punished for the actions of people who were simply expressing their free speech rights. Secondly, I'd also like to tell you that you're missing a very good show, Cyber Demon 531 on YouTube, and she, Andrea, is a very good host. Her program is called Above It All, and it would benefit you to perhaps have her on your show. And with that, I won't take any questions. Goodbye.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I agree that people that were simply using their First Amendment right shouldn't be, arrested or punished. I think the people that were storming the Capitol, for instance, breaking glass and, menacing people, I think probably should be some form of punishment. Although I'm open to arguments in favor of restraint as long as we book all these assholes.
Yeah, exactly. That was a pretty good Mitch McConnell. It was a little Tom Brokaw. I think, yeah.
Was it Brokaw or I thought it was Ida or Aller. Or didn't Rather do that like he had a marble in his mouth?
Yeah,
oh.
But I mean, I think they kind of dovetail with one another. All right, let's take one more call. 608 number. Who is this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Emma. This is Tom. I'm calling from South Central Wisconsin.
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. I want to first thing I want to do is I want to apologize because I'm the person who pulled the pin on the grenade about football talk back when after the NFC team happened. So I apologize.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I love talking about it, but I don't want to, have half our audience tune out.
I clearly lit a match, or as it were, and so anyway, I certainly agree with all your sentiments on that issue, but I'll set it aside for now.
Yeah, sure.
But that's my confession. Anyway, in terms of the interview today, I think it's worth people to go back. I think it was in April. Sam's interview with Howard Bryant, and at the time that was in the same time frame as the Michigan storming of that Capitol, and he, paraphrasing what he said about it, but it was essentially, and I think this was part and parcel of the interview today, was that those people storming the Capitol were saying, we're taking what is ours. This is ours, we're taking it. And that's sort of what the U.S. Capitol thing was, as opposed to the other street protests were saying, we're asking for the things that we deserve. It was sort of this affirmative act of this is ours, we're taking it. I think that's an important kind of angle on that story that can't be overlooked, and it's scary beyond belief.
Yeah, I agree. That's why my favorite American context to put it in is Bacon's Rebellion. On Literary Hangover, you can check out recent episodes, but that was basically early Virginia colonies saying, and like Bacon himself was a slave owner, plantation owner, but the smaller plantation slavers basically saying, hey, we want to just be able to, one, take Native Americans, and B, kill the Native Americans if they do something about it without having to have any kind of royal authority. And that, I mean, they stormed the Capitol. Bacon got himself reinstituted at gunpoint into the governor's council. I think obviously, I don't know. I think you're right to put it that way. And I think this is something that is timeless, or if not timeless, very common in history. And this recurs, this we're going to take this and consolidate this power. I mean, it predates. I think of it as a proto-fascism, to be honest. But some people don't, mark fascism as starting either in, Europe, or I've seen arguments that say the Klan itself was. But I think it's the same. It's force against democracy, I mean, there's some other things with Bacon's Rebellion there. But anyway, go on. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I don't even know I didn't even click on that, but it muted me. Keep going.
I say let's not hold our breath waiting for these folks to go off into the shadows, because they're not, and they should only feel emboldened in a lot of ways, which is kind of funny, because we talk all the time about, we have to meet these terrorists, so we don't do these things with these terrorists. They won't respect, I mean, it's the same old play, but in a different context, and there's a lot to worry about there. Anyway, I'll shut up, let you go, and you guys have a great day, and Emma, great job, and y'all, great job. See you later. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right. I think that's our last call. I'm really sorry about the phone system today, guys. We had some issues, but I'll have it fixed tomorrow. But this wasn't live on the internet, right, Matt? This was just a trial run?
No, this was all live to thousands and thousands of people.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Do you have anything you want to get to?
No, I think that's kind of a good place to end on it. I mean, I always like to end on Bacon's Rebellion. But what do we have tomorrow? Do we have another pre-tape, or do you have a guest tomorrow?
I do have a guest tomorrow. I believe we are going to be joined by John Fetterman, candidate for Senate in Pennsylvania, which I'm
very excited
about in the first hour. Yeah, that's going to be a great interview. He is a really interesting candidate for Senate in Pennsylvania, up for election in 2022. And first, obviously, has to get past the Democratic primary. But I think he's really formidable and a really interesting test case into how leftist politicians, I would put him in that category, especially as relative in the United States, can make hay in the Senate, which it's a lot harder to do. The Justice Democrats have had a lot of success on the House level, where it's a lot more direct. But Fetterman has been able to toe this line of being lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania while also kind of capturing a more populist tone. So I'm pretty pumped about that. I don't know about you, Matt.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, so No Miki, she tweeted about it. I saw her internet is still down, but hopefully the No Miki show will be up and running at 3 p.m. today. Then
you know, it's funny. My internet all morning was horrible, and I didn't want to tell you because I was trying to.
Out.
Exactly. Like I'm like because I had to run the pre-tape, and just about 45 minutes before, all of a sudden I clicked on. So we dodged one. So yeah, hopefully better tomorrow, folks.
Hopefully better tomorrow. I was like, so I did the intro, right? I'm like, I nailed it. I did the whole, I remembered what to say about Sam's intro, the Gowanus Canal, all that stuff. I did all right. And then, I sound like Bane? Cool. But I appreciate you guys sticking with it. We'll be, we'll have ironed out all the kinks tomorrow. So, check out Left Reckoning. Check out Literary Hangover. Check out the No Miki show. Check out I'm Sitting in Sam's Chair and This Is What Happens. We'll pretend that didn't happen before. Check out the Antifada. Awesome stuff. Thanks so much, Matt.
Peace out, folks.
Later.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there.